Hello and welcome back to the channel. So the dust has finally settled on the transfer window, and I think it's fair to say that Liverpool's transfer window is at best disappointing and at worst shambolic. So I want to start off by giving a massive shout out. My transfer window yesterday, obviously, like many of you, I was working, but in the background, I joined a stream at Cop Talk TV, and I was with Dunk for over 17 hours of the transfer window. And one thing that became abundantly clear whilst I was part of that stream is that when everyone was joining, there was almost this buzz of excitement, like, oh, who are Liverpool going to sign? Surely we're in for somebody. Surely, we haven't ruled out any more transfers. There's got to be an option somewhere. There's some fingers in pies. We're looking to see what can happen. And it was around the point of Slot's interview that that everything kind of went a little bit sour, shall we say? Went a little bit dull. With Slot's comments of he doesn't expect any more incomings. However, if an opportunity presents itself, then Liverpool would be in for it. Obviously, I'm not quoting that word for word. And it didn't take long after that before people started. There was just this flatness that you kind of get used to being a Liverpool fan. That nothing was going to happen, and the flatness isn't because I think that the fan base wanted us to go out and sign £80 million players, £50 million players, £100 million players. The flatness was because we've seen a growing trend at Liverpool in us having a priority position that we want to strengthen in, and us failing an attempt to land that target and then just moving away from it. And it's a trend that carried on. So if I go back to when Slot took over, Hughes came in, Edwards was back, and the Liverpool sort of transfer committee started to formulate. Obviously, at the time, we were told, don't really expect anything in July, and things are going to start moving in August. And also, there's other things as well. So Slot needed to assess the squad. And when they said that, I'll be honest, to me, it made perfect sense. Because whilst we've heard so much in recent times about how Slot and Klopp, they're so similar, they're tactically similar, they set up in the same way, they counter-press similar way, but there are differences in the way that they line up. Slot is far more controlled in his possession. We see him work a lot more with build-up at the back, and we see the way that Liverpool recycle the ball, and we don't just constantly look to bombard the other team and try and score as many goals as possible. So therefore, a different profile of player is going to be needed. So whatever list of players you've got on your shortlist suddenly now might not be the correct players for a new manager and a new system. And with that, there's always an opportunity for Slot to get the players in, to take a look at them in training, to see, okay, maybe under Klopp, this player didn't work in this position, but under Slot, with a new style in that position, this player would work. And obviously, I'm talking about Ryan Gravenberch in this. And I understand that, and I completely agree that that's probably the right philosophy to take. I'll wait for the ambulance to go past. Good timing. Unfortunately, I live next to a busy road, so we're probably going to hear a few more of those go past at some point. So obviously I'm talking about Gravenberch in this. But at the same time, it made sense to me that Slot would want to do that. And it also made sense that, given the fact that a lot of players were at the Euros, you don't want to suddenly start throwing prices out here, there, and everywhere, because you can't start to... We know a lot of football is done in the background, and by that what I mean is, we know, for example, with the Zubimendi deal, that Liverpool were in contact with his agents and with him directly, or whoever it was, to try and make sure that he wanted to come to the club before activating the release clause. So if a player's out at the Euros or at Copa America, you can't then go ahead and do that deal or understand whether the player wants that move until they come back. A, because the player will obviously be focusing on international duty, and B, out of respect for that player as well. You don't want to be disrespectful by approaching them at a time when they are busy playing for their country, fully focused on whatever international tournament they're involved in. And it goes the same with the Liverpool players as well. It's difficult to assess every option Liverpool have in their squad if you don't have every option available. So it made sense to me at the time that Liverpool were going to take their time, and then they were going to identify the weak areas of the team based on what Slot sees from the team, and then list a number of targets and then go off and go for them. And then when they came back, we were told that there were 3 positions that we were looking to improve upon. The first being a number 6. Then we were also going to look for a defender, and we were going to look for a utility attacker, I believe the quote was. And they identified quite quickly that Zubimendi was the main target. We all saw that, I think it was Ornstein and Joyce, they came out and they said, Liverpool have prioritised a number 6 who doesn't play in the Premier League, and then it wasn't long afterwards that it was announced that it was Martin Zubimendi of Real Sociedad. And then what then happened was, over a number of days, we were negotiating with the player, and he'd given us the yes, and everything was fantastic. And then suddenly it all fell apart because he loves mountains and paella and whatever else it was that made him decide to stay in Spain. And whilst what I just said might sound a bit disrespectful, I don't mind the fact he chose to stay. In fact, I have a respect for him now for not choosing the riches and the glamour of the Premier League and Liverpool, and instead staying loyal to his hometown club. I get that, I understand that, and whatever measures Sociedad used to keep him there, I hope Liverpool work as hard to keep Trent, for example. So then it came out that there was no alternative to that, and that's the part that I really have the gripe with. In the sense that when Slot identified who he wanted, he wouldn't have said a player, he would have said a profile. He's looking for a number 6. He's looking for someone who can win the ball, who can play the ball, who's good at passing, who's got this, that, and the other going for him. At the end of the day, football teams, they won't just identify a player that can improve their squad. Like, yes, that a player might come up and be an obvious choice for that, but it's always a position, a role, a duty that they have that they want filled in their squad. And that's based on that profile. Martin Zubimendi came out as being top of that list, but there would have been a 2 and a 3, because how can you be top of a list if there's only one person on that list? How can you be identifying a position and only find one player? They would have had to go through and say, let's say for argument's sake, this list brought back players like Edison of Atalanta, and then they would have looked at his numbers and everything else and then gone, no, he's not the one. Then you go on to the next one, no, he's not the one. And then you list it based in order of what your preference is. What, you know, your top target is Martin Zubimendi, and then you have a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. If I was part of a recruitment team, I would be looking for a list of players who can all play that particular role, and then you would order them based on, you know, obviously which one's the best and the most suitable, and then go down the list. And obviously, when we failed with Martin Zubimendi, and then they came out and said, oh, the number 6 search is over, whilst I didn't believe it. I think I said in the video that I didn't believe it at the time. I think over time, I did actually start to think that, okay, yeah, that, you know, they're talking the truth here. Then they're not looking for another one. At the time, I thought it was some kind of negotiating tactic. That, you know, I found it weird that they said something along the lines of he doesn't play in the Premier League, as an indication that, well, actually their top target is someone who plays in the Premier League. But they were kind of hoping that maybe launching this offer for Martin Zubimendi meant that the other team would be a bit more open to a negotiation, fearing, okay, well, if we don't sell now, will we get that same money next time? But as it transpired, and obviously we're not privy to everything that happens in the background of a football club. Obviously, we know what we're told through press releases and journalists, but we also know that some of that information is fed directly from the club. So we just decide to abandon that. Now, every single person, every single Liverpool fan, whether you are a top red or whether you're an FSG out, if I said to you, name me 5 defensive midfielders that could play for Liverpool, everyone could pick 5. Yet the Liverpool transfer committee, let's call them, could only identify 1 and then failed on that 1. So there's no way that you can look at this transfer window without thinking that it is a failure. And it's another failure on top of Caicedo and Lavia last season, Zubimendi the season before. With regards to Liverpool's transfer business then, it didn't seem... I got the impression that Liverpool would have been happy to not buy anybody at all. Mamardashvili, I think it's a good signing. I genuinely do. I think that the deal itself for him is a good deal. I think himself is a great goalkeeper with a ton of potential to be up there with the likes of Allison at some point in the future. But then that negotiation took a long time. You know, Liverpool seem to have this thing whereby when we know what it's going to take to get a deal done, we then try and negotiate that. So Valencia said, I believe it was 40 million euros would get you Mamardashvili. We then said, okay, well, we want to pay 30. And this is a negotiating tactic that failed with Lavia. I think Lavia was 50 million and we went in with a low price and kept on haggling until the point where we were absolutely desperate and said, yeah, okay, we'll pay whatever you want us to pay. And it was the same with Mamardashvili. I do think that with Mamardashvili, obviously, we had a little bit more on our side in the fact that we have got Allison and we have got Kelleher as a backup. So if Valencia wanted to do a deal, if they needed to sell a player, the ball was in Liverpool's court, so negotiating that does make sense. But if Valencia start playing hardball and saying, no, we want 40, we want 40, we want 40, then at some point you either shit or you get off the toilet, pardon my language. But then we managed to get that deal done. And now Mamardashvili will join us next season because he stays at Valencia for a year on loan. But then that's starting to raise more questions now. Well, what's going on with Allison? He's only 31 years old. He's got a 2-year contract with a year extension. So he'll be, he can stay here till 2027. He's come out and said that he would sign a new contract at the club. So why are we bringing in someone who is definitely going to want to play first team football for a goalkeeper who has got however many years he's got left? He's the best keeper in the Premier League, in my opinion, the best keeper in the world, and he's only 31 years old. He could easily play till his mid-30s. Will Mamardashvili want to stay and compete against him and potentially be number 2 next season, the season after? Probably not. So it does kind of look like, okay, well, now we're preparing for life without Allison. But Allison's comments when he came out and said that he would sign a new contract suggest that it's not actually Allison's choice. And it's Liverpool planning for an exit, which even the player's probably not expecting at the moment. So then that was done. And then we suddenly decided towards the end of the transfer window, we're going to get Chiesa. Chiesa was available for around the price we bought him from the very start of the transfer window. The very start. I remember seeing stories. Liverpool were linked with him. Other teams were linked with him. He was £10 million, £12 million, and you can get Federico Chiesa. And it took us right up until the very end of the transfer window to get that deal done. Whereas I don't think you needed to be an expert to know that we only have backup. We have no backup for Mo Salah apart from Ben Doak. So that went incredibly quickly. It was like Liverpool are interested in Chiesa. Chiesa's in Liverpool having his medical, deal done and signed. So when Liverpool want to act, we can move quickly. Yet we've shown throughout the rest of the transfer window with the Zubimendi and the Mamardashvili that we also like to draw out transfers for some reason that I don't particularly understand. And then that was it. It was finished. Transfer window over. So we didn't secure the centre-back or the defender that they were looking for. We didn't secure the number 6 that they were looking for. And we have secured the utility attacker that we were looking for. So it's a failure of a transfer window. If you fail at 2 out of your 3 targets, you can't see that as a successful transfer window. It could only be viewed as a failure because you failed on 2 of them. So I don't understand this notion of, oh, well, Liverpool, that in any way, shape or form, I can't understand if anyone suggested this is a successful transfer window. I also don't understand any fan. And by the way, I'm not FSG out. I made a video yesterday where I explained my stance. I'm not in, I'm not out. I just want whatever's best for the football club. And if that means that FSG have to go and we get someone who's more football minded and ambitious, I'm okay with that. If FSG decide to stay at the club and then carry on building Liverpool for another 10, 15, 20 year spell of us being at the top of the league, I'm okay with that as well. I'm not FSG out, not FSG in, but there seems to be like this running theme that like, oh, you want a signing, so therefore why don't you go and support Chelsea, why don't you go support Man U, why don't you go and support any of these teams that are willing to spend big money? But all the fans are asking for is what Liverpool themselves identified. We identified a number 6 as being our priority target for the transfer window. We identified a defender as being a target for this transfer window. So you can't listen to the club's words of saying we need a number 6 or we want a number 6. Excuse me. And then failing to get that player and then still defending that it's been a successful transfer window. If Liverpool say we want a number 6, and then the fans are like, okay, yeah, we need a number 6. Clearly, we've identified it. We need a number 6. And then Liverpool go, we don't want a number 6. You can't then expect all of the fans to go, oh, yeah, we don't want a number 6. No, we don't need it. So that's where my issue with this transfer window comes. I never wanted a ton of players. I didn't expect us to spend 100 million, 150 million, 200 million, 500 million, or however much money. I didn't expect that. I didn't think we needed it, to be fair. I think Robertson is good for another year at least. I think that our attack is one of the best, if not the best attacks in the Premier League. Salah, Jota, Gakpo, Diaz, Darwin. Now with Chiesa added into that mix, I think we have the best attack. I think defensively, we are solid, but maybe if we were going to lose players, we would then need to bring in backups. But the club itself identified as a defender. I think they said that they wanted a defender who, whilst he may not be ready for the first team now, will develop and challenge for the first team in a year or so. And then you look at that and you have, for example, Sepp van der Berg, who fits that. He's a defender who's probably not ready for the first team right now, but he might be challenging for that spot in the next year or so. And we sold him. Then we told Joe Gomez that if he wants to leave the club, he can leave the club, identifying that we don't see him as being that. So I don't understand what the transfer policy was for Liverpool. And I think that's probably the most confusing part. That's the reason why I think I've struggled so much to sort of talk about my views on this transfer window. On one hand, we're now saying, okay, no, we think this squad is good enough to go and compete next season. On the other hand, we told Endo that he wasn't good enough for the club. We've also now suggesting that maybe Tyler Morton can step up and become that backup DM to Ryan Gravenberch, whilst also saying that we would be willing to sell Tyler Morton, which then suggests he's not good enough. It feels to me like we've, at some point or another, confirmed that every single player that we think can play number 6 is not good enough, and now we're saying we think they are good enough. Even Ryan Gravenberch, who has played very, very well in the opening 2 games, the fact that we identified that number 6 as a priority target suggests that Liverpool felt he wasn't that player to be that number 6 for the whole season. So we've literally dismissed every single player we have that can play there, whilst telling everyone now that every player we have that can play there is good enough to play there. So why was we in for a number 6 anyway? It doesn't make sense to me. So yeah, it's been a confusing transfer window. It's been a frustrating transfer window. It's been one that I think this is the most divided I've seen a fan base at Liverpool at all. Like, we have people coming out and slating top Reds almost consistently saying that they're the problem with the club. They shouldn't be happy with this. They should go against the owners. I've seen on, for example, Redmen TV. I've seen people in their comments constantly calling them out, FSG out, insulting them as well, calling them top Reds and all this kind of stuff. And then on the opposite side, I've seen people say, you know, if you want to spend money, go and support Chelsea. If you want to spend money, go and support Man United. You wanted a striker, they've given you you wanted a signing, they've given you a signing. And then something, my brother sent me a message yesterday. So my brother supports Birmingham City. And as you may or may not know, Birmingham City got relegated to League One last season. So they're playing there now. And they identified one of their top targets to be a player they had on loan in Stansfield from Fulham. And Birmingham signed him for £20 million. A League One club have just spent £20 million on their top target. And Liverpool, that's nearly double what Liverpool paid for our only signing that's going to benefit us this season. We're meant to be an elite club. We're meant to be a club challenging. We're meant to be a club that's constantly fighting for trophies, for accolades, for, you know, we want to be the most successful club in England. We want to go out there. Our European heritage, we've got 6 Champions League wins. We want 7, we want 8. We want to be considered European royalty. You know, when people talk about European clubs, they want us to be mentioned in the same breaths as the likes of Real Madrid, Barcelona, so on and so forth. We've won 1 Premier League. 1 Premier League. And you're telling me that Birmingham City in League One are outspending us. Not just outspending us in terms of the amount of players they've brought in, but on a player. A single player, they've outspent us this season for players that can benefit us this season. And that's the difference, in my opinion, between ambition and running a club for a business. The ambition of Birmingham City, obviously, is to get back promoted. So what's Liverpool's ambition with the deals that we've done that can benefit us for this season? Because the way that I look at it is, we finished 3rd last season under Jurgen Klopp. And this is no disrespect to Arne Slot. I like him. I do like him. I didn't really know much about him before. I knew that Tottenham were after him. But I didn't really know much about him in terms of what his style and what his profile was. But since the announcement, obviously, I've researched a lot. I've seen a lot of Feyenoord games last season as a result of it. And I really like the way that he's coming to Liverpool and the style of football that he's got us playing. I like him in press conferences as well. He seems, in every interview I've seen him, he seems really focused on what he wants. One of the things I love the most about him is, like, when we beat Man United, for example, in the pre-season friendly, he didn't come away saying, oh yeah, great result, everything else. He said, oh, there's some good things, but there's a lot of bad things that we need to work on. He's always looking to get that perfection out of the club, and I do like that about him. But Jurgen Klopp was a legendary manager for us. He was probably, you know, the best manager that a lot of fans have seen. You know, you look before him in the likes of Kenny Dalglish, who didn't have a successful spell on his return to the club. You look at Roy Hodgson, less said about that the better. Brendan Rodgers had 1 good season with us, and the rest of the time he wasn't a very good manager. And even if you want to go back to sort of the back end of Rafa, you know, he wasn't as successful as what Klopp was. So in modern times, Jurgen Klopp is the most successful manager that we've ever had. Not ever had, but in modern times at least. And he got this team to 3rd last season. So by not improving that squad, we are expecting a manager who most of us would probably say is not on the same level as Klopp, to be fair. And we expect him to do what with that team? Finish higher than that? Because what I see is, if you take the 3rd best team in England and you don't add any players to it, the highest you can expect to finish is 3rd again. So are we just happy to be a top 4 club now? This is the same thing that I've seen that people used to criticise Arsenal for under Arsene Wenger, have just been a top 4 club. Top 4's a trophy. So now Liverpool are doing the same, and we're accepting that. And yeah, there's an argument, different manager, different style of play. maybe with this more controlling possession, we can start getting extra percentages out of players, extra, those little extra yards. They can stay fitter for longer over the course of the season, so maybe we can challenge for a little bit longer. But ultimately, I don't see us, taking a team that finished third and then expecting us to finish higher than that, unless obviously the bigger teams in terms of the Arsenals and the Man Cities have a massive fall off this season, which most of us would agree probably won't happen. It's unlikely to happen to one of them. It's almost impossible for it to happen to both of them. So, but then other teams around us are strengthening as well. You look at what Man United have done this season alone. They've identified the weak areas of their team. They've improved their centre-back position, which was poor last season. They've improved on their full-back position with Mazraoui. Arguably, they still need a left-back. I don't know why they haven't signed one. They've also, Ugarte has improved their midfield, because Casemiro wasn't great last season. They've improved their strike force with Xerxes as well, which wasn't great last season either. So Man United have made big strides to try and close the gap between them where they finished last season and the top four. Villa have improved by bringing in some new players. Okay, they've lost one, but they brought in new players. West Ham have improved this season, for example. Fulham have improved this season, for example. Every team that finished below us have improved, and we've just stayed the same. And I can't see that that's a good way to run a football club. I genuinely can't. And also, when you look at the fact that, next season, so let's talk about the contract situation now, and then we can come back to it. So first things first, I don't think we're going to do contracts during a transfer window. I don't think it's good practice. I think that the team should be focusing on other targets, such as bringing players in, identifying new players, so on and so forth. So bringing or getting players to sign new contracts, we have until January, realistically, before we need to really start panicking that these players haven't signed. So you can get the transfer window done, and then your focus turns to the new contracts. And there's a possibility that we lose at least one. There's a possibility that we lose two. There's also a possibility that we do lose three. Touch wood, that doesn't happen, but it's a possibility right now. So if we lose, let's say, Mo Salah, are we saying that Chiesa is the replacement for Mo Salah? I don't think so. I think Chiesa's good. Don't get me wrong. I think he's actually a great sign. I've done a video saying that it was a brilliant sign. I do agree with that. But he's not Mo Salah. If we lose Van Dijk, who's the backup for Van Dijk? Because as good as I think Konate is, I don't think he's as good as Van Dijk. As good as Kwanzaa is, I don't think he's as good as Van Dijk. And Joe Gomez is not as good as Van Dijk. So we don't have a replacement there for Virgil. Trent, some people would argue that if we lose Trent, then obviously Conor Bradley would be able to step up. But I think that they are different players. I think Conor Bradley's a much more direct player. He gets the ball down, he's got pace, he likes to run at people, break through in either the overlap or the underlap. Whereas Trent, he's more of a magician with the ball. The passing range that he's got is exquisite. So when you think of the amount of goals that Liverpool have come through just Trent's passing ability alone, if you take Trent out of that team, we'll have to change the way that we play entirely to lose Trent's ability from that starting lineup. So what plans have we put in place if we do lose any of those players? Chiesa is the only one realistically. And I just don't think it's good practice from the football club. Even if, let's say, all three players decide to sign a new contract, you turn around and say, okay, yeah, that's fantastic, but, well done, they've secured them all to new contracts. But when you look at the ages of Van Dijk and Salah, we should be planning for life after them anyway, regardless. We should be looking at options now. Okay, when Salah does start his decline, for example, or when we get to the point where Salah's no longer, able to play at the elite level, who have we got to replace him? I don't think we've got anyone really. And then the same for Virgil. I do think Kwanzaa is obviously an interesting prospect to see how good he can become, but I don't think he can become as good as Virgil van Dijk. So what are we doing there? And then also Robertson as well. Are we planning for life without Robertson? Because I think many of us don't think Tsimikas is good enough. And I'm also sure I saw reports saying that Tsimikas, the club would be happy for him to go. So there's another player that we've kind of said, you're not good enough, but now you are good enough. So it just seems like a bad transfer window on the whole. We haven't fixed the current problems. We haven't looked to address any of the future problems, barring Mamardashvili, who I don't think it was a problem. I don't think we had a problem with Allison. And now we're left until at least January going through with this team. So then we look at the exits as well. So when you take that into account, this is also where it starts to get concerning for me. Stefan Bajcetic has gone out on loan, which I don't necessarily think it's a bad decision to let him go out on loan. He obviously missed a lot of football, and going out to Salzburg gives him the opportunity now to improve, shall we say, to get better, to put his to put last season behind him, get minutes in him, start to find his way back to where he used to be, and then we can assess whether or not we think he's going to be good enough. I'm fine with that. I don't mind that as a transfer decision. It makes sense. It also kind of highlights that they do see Bajcetic as being the number 6 going forward, in my opinion, but they don't feel like he's ready for it now. So okay, I haven't looked at the deal in a lot of detail, but I hope Liverpool have a clause that we can recall him if needed, because I can see there's going to be a point this season where he is going to be needed for a start. Carvalho. So I thought Carvalho had a good preseason. If I'm being honest, I never thought that he was realistically gonna be a player that gets into the first team, and I think that the problem that Carvalho had is that he plays in a position that we are well stocked in. So if you see him as a left winger, he's not going to get in above Diaz and Gakpo. If you see him as more of a central attacking midfielder, he's not going to get in above Szoboszlai and Harvey Elliott. So realistically, to get £30 million for him, it's a good deal. It's a good bit of business. I didn't see him realistically ever playing for Liverpool, so I'm fine with that. Sepp van den Berg. Now, going on to what I mentioned earlier on, he would have been our 5th choice defender, and he's 21 years old, I do believe. So he has the potential to really stake a claim, to impress Arne Slot and then move up that order. So going from 5th choice centre back, he could have really staked his claim to become 4th choice, 3rd choice, wherever you see him going. He had the potential, although he didn't have, in my opinion, the ability at the moment to be as good as what we've already got. He wasn't going to compete against Virgil van Dijk. He wasn't going to compete against Ibu Konate, and he wasn't going to compete against Kwanzaa either. Although I do think in pre-season, him and Kwanzaa did look like a decent centre-back pairing, especially I think it was the Betis game he looked good, and the Arsenal game I thought he looked good as well. So there's that. So selling him and then not going after a centre-back, that didn't make sense to me. I thought we would be selling him and then bringing in someone else. Obviously, we didn't see him as being that long-term player who is going to step up one day. So if that's the case, I'm happy to let him go. We're losing a 5th choice centre-back for, was it £25 million? I don't think that's a bad deal. I'm happy with that deal. I've got no complaint to it. But then now we're saying that we don't have a 5th choice centre-back. So Konate, for example, we know he's injury-prone. So we are going to be relying on players like Joe Gomez next season, for example, who personally I don't think centre-back's his best position. I think he looks more comfortable at either right or left-back. But okay, I think it was a bad decision. And then Clark. Clark, I think, whilst I do appreciate everything that Clark done last season for us, I think he did step up when he was needed, and he did show potential for the future. I think that on the whole, I'm not disappointed with the fact that he's gone. I think that if we were going to lose a player and raise some money, Clark is not going to dent the team. I don't think he was really going to stake a claim in the team this season, and potentially not next season. So therefore, if we can generate funds, then we can let him go. And I think the same for Harvey Blair as well, who went for like £300,000. If he's going for that amount of money into the level, then obviously we felt he wasn't good enough. I'm happy with those decisions. But the problem that I have with those decisions on the whole is that we haven't bought anybody. So why are we selling off the potential future of the club? That's my issue. If you want to sell off the players who will potentially step up and become first team players in the future, but you don't want to buy any players that can go into the first team now, where are we leaving the club? We're almost saying that we have this team and only this team. And I think that doesn't make any sense for a football club. Doak's gone out on loan. I agree with that move, but we were also prepared to sell Doak. But we haven't brought in a replacement for a long-term replacement for Mo Salah. So we're saying that we're trying to sell off the young talent that we've got now without bringing in any talent going forward. And we're not bringing in anyone who can do the job now either. It's just been a very strange window for Liverpool, and I think that it does need to be addressed. I think whether you're FSG out or whether you're FSG in, you can understand the frustration around the club. You can understand the way that we haven't fulfilled our targets this season. We haven't gone out and we haven't got the right players to come in. We haven't strengthened in any of the areas that needed strengthening. We haven't hit our targets, our priority targets, apart from arguably Chiesa. And then we're letting go of the potential future of the football club as well, with no clear direction of what we're going to do afterwards. So for me, the window was a fail. And I think that we need to look as a club at how this happened, who's responsible for this, and what we need to do going forward. The one thing I have seen lately, which annoys me a bit, is that people are now turning on Slot. And I agree, it's not a great deal of people. It's mainly people on X. So I'm not taking it as though it's going to be the majority of the fan base, but calling Slot a yes man, for example, Slot isn't in charge of transfers. It's been made abundantly clear that he's head coach. It's not his job to go out and make these transfers. He can turn around and tell the committee, he can tell Hughes, Edwards, whoever, I want to fulfill this position, I need this kind of player, I need this kind of style, but then it's up to them to go and make those deals come true. And if they're not doing that, we then can't blame Slot for it. What I think going forward we should do is be making any questions from journalists or whoever regarding transfers. We should make Hugh sit in the press conferences alongside Arne Slot so he can answer those questions, because it's not Slot's job, and we're making him a fall guy already when he's only been at the club for a few months, and it's not his job to do that. No one's going to go into the biggest job that they've ever had within the first few months, start pissing off the owners by complaining and moaning about the transfer strategy. Of course he's going to turn around and say things that are almost designed to defend what's currently happening. Of course he's happy with this current squad because it's better than the previous squad that he was managing. So it's understandable that he's going to be in a position where he's like, yeah, I'm happy, because anyone would be managing that team compared to the final team. So to call him a yes man this early, for me, is ridiculous. And I don't blame Slot, and I hope the fan base don't turn on him if things start to go bad. If we suddenly lose Gravenberch to injury and we have no number 6 that can play the way Slot wants to play, and we start getting poor results, I hope that the fan base understand who's really to blame for this. I hope they understand that it's not Slot's fault. If he's identified something and the people who are meant to do that, if it's their job to go and fill the holes that Slot identifies, haven't done their job, that's where we should be directing our blame and directing our anger, not at Slot. And I'll stick by that. I'll defend Slot now on this issue for as long as it takes. I do think that Slot is a good manager. I'm looking forward to the rest of the season with Arne Slot. And longer as well. I hope he has the kind of career at Liverpool that Klopp did. So, yeah. But I just find it stupid that in the fan base that we have, which is normally a great fan base. Liverpool fans have always been fiercely loyal to the football club. But now what we're seeing is, instead of people being looking at the actual issues, that it's almost blind loyalty in one way or another. If the club identify a number 6 has been the priority target, they don't sign a number 6, and fans complain about that. They don't want to go and support Chelsea. They just want what the club said they were going to do. And also, I think we all want Slot to be successful. So if Slot needs a number 6, don't we all want him to have that to be successful? But yeah, that's my thoughts on it. Again, I think it's been a very disappointing transfer window for many reasons. I do think that Liverpool have failed in the transfer window. I think that you can't call it anything else if you fail 2 out of your 3 targets. But that being said, I am still looking forward to seeing Chiesa play in a Liverpool shirt. I'm looking forward to seeing how Slot can get this team and what he can do with this team. I'm looking forward to see his style of play develop over the coming games, coming weeks, coming months. And I am still obviously back in the club no matter what. And I hope everyone else does the same as well. I think that no matter what your frustrations are, whether your frustrations are with the board, whether it's with Hughes and Edwards, no matter who it's with, I hope that we all back the players to go out there and do their best. And I'm just looking forward to this weekend's game, to be quite honest with you. What I do hope as well is that if we don't get the result that we're looking for against Man United, we suddenly don't start to turn on the players and on the coaching staff. If you are frustrated with Liverpool's transfer business, direct that at the people in charge of the transfers. If you are one of those who see successive failures over multiple seasons, where we had different people in charge of transfers, then direct it at the people who hire them. Don't direct it at the manager, the coaching staff, the players. They go out there and do their best for the shirt. So I hope that that's going to be the case. And yeah, so I hope you enjoyed the video. Bit of a long one today, bit more ranty, obviously, with a disappointing transfer window behind us. But yeah, if you enjoyed the video, please do drop a like. Let me know in the comments your thoughts on this transfer window. Let me know how you think it went, no matter what side you are on. If you're happy with the transfer window, let me know in the comments. And likewise, if you're disappointed with the transfer window, let me know in the comments which way you feel it is. I'm not going to be one of those that's going to be calling people out if I disagree with what you think. I think we all have an opinion, and everyone's opinion is valid. Just because my opinion is different to your opinion doesn't mean I'm right, or it doesn't mean you're right. So let me know below if you completely disagree with everything I've said and you actually like this transfer window and you think that Liverpool have done well. And yeah, if you enjoy the channel, please do subscribe. It means a lot to me. I'm getting a lot of subscribers recently. From that, I also want to give a massive shout out again to Cop Talk TV. He's been mentioning me on his live streams and everything else, and it means a lot to me that I'm growing this much this quickly. So hopefully I can continue. And also thank you for the comments that I've been getting recently as well. They are massively appreciated. Obviously, giving me advice on things that I can do to improve the way that the screens look, and also giving me advice on things I can do with the channel. I am looking to put everything in place. Every bit of feedback's welcome, no matter what it is. So thank you very much. And I will speak to you all in the next one. Take care, and I'll speak to you all soon. Goodbye.